Lot of people are motivated to care about environment because they care about future generations which are going to inherit this planet. At the same time, there is a strand of antinatalists who are antinatalists for environmental reasons. Even the ethical antinatalists are generally supportive of environmental protection, even if their reasons to oppose procreation is not rooted in environmentalism. At least they do not support environmental destruction. But if you are an antinatalist who is supporting environmental preservation, you are aligning with those who care for future generations. But you are also against bringing future generations into existence. Then why should you care? This apparent paradox was addressed in a recent paper by Kirk Lougheed in Should Antinatalists Strive to Improve the World? The strongest practical reasons in favor of environmental care are based on concern for future generations, something antinatalists do not want to exist. Since antinatalists are committed to the extinction of human species, it is unclear why they should care about environmental preservation and protection. And the contradiction goes beyond just the environmental concerns, like why would you support anything which will do good in the world if it will also encourage people to procreate more? Hence the title, Should Antinatalists Strive to Improve the World? The lowest hanging fruit in this sort of argument is the appeal to extinction. Kirk notes that antinatalists don't have extinction as a goal, they only accept it as a consequence, which is lesser of the available evils. Adopting antinatalism might result in extinction, but it does not require aiming at it. There is simply nothing to suggest in antinatalism that it has the goal of human extinction. Moreover, the case of extinction is theoretical. Even if extinction is a goal for some of the antinatalists, that remains a theoretical aspect as of today because people will keep on having children. We live in a largely pro-natalist world despite declining fertility rates. So drastic practical steps like not caring about environment for future generations might only make sense if everybody agrees on this goal of extinction. Secondly, even if everyone agrees on the goal of extinction and also on that being an antinatalist goal, sudden extinction is not helpful as the last generation will suffer the most. David Benatar addresses this in Better Never to Have Been and proposes a phased extinction such that the last generation is small as possible in terms of population size. And so it makes sense to be motivated by well-being of future generations in the interim and to be concerned with the kind of environment they will inherit. Caring about the environment is one way to alleviate some of the suffering of those final humans. Kirk also questions whether most people are really concerned about environment to start with and whether their main motivation comes from concern for future generations. I see very little evidence that many of us are very concerned about the environment, even if we say we are, and primarily because of future generations. And even if we accept that supporting environmental preservation may create conditions which are favorable to procreation, the question is, what should we do about it? One way is to be destructive towards environment, but that would also mean that creating conditions that hinder people's procreative freedom. Removing the conditions under which procreation is permissible by making planet uninhabitable to humans is in effect taking away procreative freedom. This is also a problem for many antinatalists. The antinatalist might be committed to antinatalism while reasonably being constrained in practice by an underlying commitment to procreative freedom. Well, then what about being indifferent, just a hands-off approach to whatever happens to the environment? That too does not align with the antinatalist perspectives. Though apathy might result in less acute or intense suffering for the current generation, the longer the world exists, the more the suffering that the antinatalist wishes to avoid continues unimpeded. The same contradiction can be extended beyond environmental concerns. Antinatalists may support doing good in the world which may help procreation. Consider the following initiatives that could be undertaken to make the world a better place: universal access to healthcare, fair wages and labor practices, universal access to education and end to war, universal food security. Most antinatalists would support such initiatives because these help to reduce suffering in the world, but at the same time, they create conditions that might enable or encourage procreation. You could argue that you support these things only because you want to reduce the suffering of already existing people, but you would still face with the problem that those current people will go on to have children or more children as a result of better living conditions. For both of these contradictions, the environmental or just doing good in general, Kirk suggests that we look at a well established and accepted philosophical principle called the doctrine of double effect. Imagine there is a terminally ill patient and he is in a lot of pain. His doctor gives him pain relieving medication with an intention to reduce the pain, but the medicine has the risk of causing the patient's death as a side effect or a double effect. If the side effect does not realize, the patient is alive and is in less pain, which is good. But if he dies as a result of this medicine, then the question arises if it was permissible for the doctor to give that medicine to this patient. The principle of double effect says that as long as the doctor's intention was not to kill, but to help alleviate pain of the patient, the risky byproduct of death does not make the action impermissible. In formal words, according to the principle of double effect, sometimes it is permissible to cause a harm as an unintended and merely foreseen side effect or double effect of bringing about a good result. The same principle can be applied here. As with the doctrine of double effect, if there were an alternative available such that failing to care about the environment right now would not hurt current persons, for example, then the antinatalist would have to pursue it. But since the antinatalist ought to be concerned with current harms to people and with preserving procreative freedom, they have to continue to care about the environment. The side effect of enabling procreation does not make the action of caring for environment impermissible for the antinatalist, and the same can be applied to doing good in general. Striving to do good can all be reasonably motivated by wanting to help the current generation. It is true that a byproduct of doing so will likely make things better for future generations and could even indirectly encourage prospective parents to procreate. So Kirk denies that there is any contradiction with being an antinatalist and doing good. Antinatalists can coherently strive to improve the world. Now, one thing that came to my mind and which Kirk does not address in his paper is whether the same doctrine of double effect can be applied to the case of having children. Parents could say that they had children with the best of intentions. They only wished benefits of life on their children, and the harms of life were a side effect of their procreative action. And so procreation is a permissible action. Now, I don't think this is that straightforward, but it would be interesting to see a proper expansion of this argument. This year, Supreme Court of India allowed a minor to have an abortion at 31 weeks in gestation, while noting that a person cannot be compelled to carry a pregnancy to its full term. In that context, Indian Express, which is a big mainstream newspaper in India, published an article, "Sometimes Abortion Can Be an Act of Compassion" by Amrita Nandy. Dr. Nandy is a PhD from Jawaharlal Nehru University in New Delhi, who teaches at the National School of India in Bengaluru and is author of Motherhood and Choice, Uncommon Mothers, Child-Free Women. In the article, Amrita notes that birth is not necessarily a welcome event. This is still a radical idea in Indian mainstream media, but Amrita candidly writes about suffering here. Since suffering is an inescapable reality of human life, every newborn will inevitably suffer repeatedly throughout their life. Suffering implies a range of mild to intense psychological distress caused by dissatisfaction, anxiety, anger, hatred, depression, besides bodily pain and discomfort and the like. In 2022, Amrita received the Dalai Lama Fellowship to write a monograph on the intersection of spirituality and social justice. She points to some antinatalist thoughts from Buddhism in this article. The centrality and certainty of suffering are also affirmed by spiritual traditions such as Buddhism. It calls birth the first step in the recurrent cycles of suffering that include sickness, aging, and death. Birth unleashes a continuum of trishna, craving, which creates a continuum of suffering that keeps us trapped in the world. By the way, the Sanskrit word trishna shares a common ancestor with the English word thirst, and they still maintain overlapping shades of meaning as desire or craving. So the abortion decision by Supreme Court had both modern philosophical and spiritual dimensions. An equally potent consideration is the spiritual distress of the pregnant person, in this case, a child herself. Remember, she was a minor. The grip of pronatalism and motherhood on our psyches can blind us to her sense of overwhelm around selfhood, existence, and purpose. That's why she concludes on a very antinatalistic note. Between an unborn child and its living mother, the Supreme Court chose well not to reproduce suffering from 1 to 2. I must say that abortion at 31 weeks of gestation might be beyond the bounds of Bennett's pro-death view because the fetus might be sentient by then. Lawrence has started a new series of Quote of the Week where he will be posting a quote related to antinatalism or pessimism every week. Here's a poll asking people about whose quotes they would like to see. Initial options are Samuel Beckett, the iconic Irish-French playwright, Mary Hugh, the French animal rights activist and an antinatalist from the past, Etty Hillsum, who was murdered in Auschwitz concentration camp, and David Benatar, who needs no introduction on this channel. So please vote if you have not already, and you can also comment on whose quotes you would like to see other than the listed ones. And he has already done the first post on Friday, which is the quote by David Benatar. Creating people by having babies is so much part of human life that it is rarely thought even to require justification. Speaking of Lawrence, we can have an easy segue into notable videos. Lawrence made a response video to a response video. A Christian nationalist had made a response video to an antinatalist about why not having children is morally problematic. Lawrence responds to this Christian view. He goes through the consent argument, the selfish reasons to have children, the God problem, and of course, the ridiculously mistaken and terrible thought experiment by this Christian nationalist constructed only to somehow justify children, which to me sounded like a desperate mental gymnastic, and Lawrence does a good job of tearing it apart. To know what that experiment was, watch the video. The Dissenter posted an interview of Dr. Teresa Barron talking about the ethics of procreation, pronatalism, and antinatalism. Dr. Barron teaches at the Nottingham University and works on reproductive ethics and philosophy of parenthood. In the episode, they talk about ethics of procreation in general, the instinct of having children versus the socially induced desire to have them, having children as an old age support, the duty to have or not have children, intersection of pronatalism with women's reproductive rights, and a lot of antinatalism and its philosophical aspects. One of the funny arguments they discuss is this phenomenon that everybody has children because everybody has children. As always, very interesting hour-long interview, and thanks to Ricardo for producing these one after another at such a pace. Rethinking is a channel which has made antinatalist videos in the past, and he made another one just as a reminder to not have kids. Just in case. He goes through Benatar's asymmetry, the lack of cosmic meaning among other things. Just a nice video to watch through. A channel called CNA, which stands for Channel News Asia, has more than 3 million subscribers, and they posted a video talking to two women from Singapore to explore why Singaporeans are saying no to having children. One of the women wants to have children while the other has been child-free by choice. So not exactly an antinatalist topic, but still helps to normalize not having children. The video is mainly from the perspective of Singaporeans, but I think it has many points common to people from other countries too. From Singapore to Maharashtra in India, a channel called Sahil Arekar made video talking about three things, broadly speaking. One, the declining fertility rates across many different countries and continents. Two, why are people not having kids? And three, what can be done about this? It's a fairly balanced video focused on demographics rather than on ethics, and made in Marathi language, which by the way also happens to be my mother tongue. Sahil touches on many things in a matter-of-factly way, some good, some bad, like how women emancipation is a good thing and one of the reasons for declining fertility rates, but cost of living a bad reason to do that. He also goes to some detail about cost of raising children in middle-class Indian household, which many child-free people as well as prospective parents would benefit from. But the missing point I felt was about the ethics of having children. Creating a new human or even a sentient being is not something we can take casually or only on the basis of monetary calculations or because of nationalist reasons. These are too shallow in comparison to ethical problems that procreation poses, and that I thought was missing. A channel called PF Jong or Yong made a critical video called Leftist Self-Hatred is Going to Kill Us. He tries to respond to different internet videos of people who either had abortion or did not want to have children. At one point, he agrees that the arguments of antinatalism are logically coherent, but denies that we should behave logically, and also fails to distinguish antinatalism from pro-mortalism or killing existing beings. In doing all this, he keeps on bringing left and right political views in the mix. This video, I think, needs a systematic response to point out the fallacies that he is using. I wish I had time for that, but for now, thanks for watching and see you next time.